Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Sean Evans of Hot Ones, and we're going to talk about the primary person problem. All right, so really fascinating. I actually really enjoy. That's a good question. I enjoy Hot Ones. Asterisk. One, I don't watch it if I don't care who the person is, right? So I won't just watch Hot Ones, and I've never watched a whole season of Hot Ones, right? But, like, a perfect example is I got very excited about Deadpool and Wolverine, and Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman went on Hot Ones together. And I actually watched that with my wife. We had a really good time. It was really, it was really nice. It was something I was able to share with her. Increasingly, I think a lot of people struggle to watch stuff with other people because there's so many shows being made that you can watch exactly what you want, and we don't really have a lot of tolerance for something that I might like anymore. So I think that's kind of interesting, just the idea of what is, what is the value of the the shows we watch. But I enjoy Hot Ones. Now the reality is there's a lot of people who love Hot Ones and they watch every episode of every season, and I think there's like there's either close to or 20 seasons. Like, it's huge. It's a really big deal. Like, the seasons are it's really fascinating, right? So you have all this going on, and but the reason we're talking today is recently there was some coverage on a couple of YouTube channels about the sale of Hot Ones. So the group who owns Hot Ones, I don't know. I don't care. Like, and the reason why is it's some large corporation, right? And not a corporation that makes anything that I'm passionate about. But I actually am passionate about Hot Ones, and I'm really fascinated by Sean Evans. And this YouTube channel said, hey, they're having trouble selling Hot Ones. They want to sell it for like $70 million, and they're not finding buyers. And this is odd because Hot Ones is one of the most successful YouTube channels ever. Like, no asterisk. Like, just the level of success that Hot Ones has had is so tremendous that they really kind of like, it's a template. Any other YouTube channel would pray to have their numbers, right? But they're having trouble selling it at $70 million. Now, why are they having trouble selling it at $70 million? Well, the reason they're having trouble selling it at $70 million, this channel said, is they have a primary person problem. So basically, Hot Ones is popular, but no one knows if Hot Ones is popular because it's a strong platform or because Sean Evans was born to do that show and poured his life into it and crushed it, right? And that basically anybody who buys it, are they going to get the next Trevor Noah, right? So, like, Jon Stewart came on and like laid it down and was like, comedy is news, right? And then he's like, hey, I'm retiring. I'm going to hand it over to Trevor Noah. And Trevor Noah was like, this is a nice gig. I don't really care about it. Do a couple years. He did like 7 years, right? I'm out. Bye, everybody. Never really hit Jon Stewart's numbers and didn't really care when he quit. Like, and so everybody's like, oh, wait a second. Sean Evans has been doing this like 10 years. He could be doing it for 20. And whoever hires him, they got to pay him whatever he wants, because they don't know if the entire show will fold the second he leaves, which is really fascinating. And there's a lot of evidence that it will fold the second he leaves, right? That, like, the second he's gone, this whole show just like, oh, that was nice. Hot Ones was Sean Evans, right? So, all right. Thanks for following me through it there. Now let's get to it, right? Does Dungeons and Dragons have a primary person problem? Is Dungeons and Dragons one person, right? So first of all, who would possibly be the Dungeons and Dragons primary person? Well, it's really not a debate at all. It's Matthew Mercer. Matthew Mercer is far more famous than anyone who has ever run or played Dungeons and Dragons. By far, right? Not by a small margin, by a lot. Okay? So that is very interesting, right? Now, let's go Olympic rules, right? The Olympics have men's sports and they have women's sports, right? And so they divide it. Is there a primary person on the female side? I think there possibly is. If there is a primary person, if let's yeah. So one, if there is a primary person for Dungeons and Dragons, it's Matthew Mercer. Let's give him the man slot, okay? If there is a primary person for female for Dungeons and Dragons, it's Ginny D. She is far more famous than even actually Satine Phoenix was quite famous for a little while, but she threw a gutter ball, and like I think she's doing like bioengineering now, or like, you know, biohacks. Like, yeah, like she's not really attached to Dungeons and Dragons in any significant way anymore, right? So it's Ginny D. She's all that's left, right? Like, and she has a huge platform. She has hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and she connects herself to Dungeons and Dragons on the regular. The last major thing she did with Dungeons and Dragons was she unveiled Lego Dungeons and Dragons Red Dragon's Tale, and actually literally flew to Denmark and played Dungeons and Dragons in the Lego headquarters with the first Lego Dungeons and Dragons Red Dragon's Tale set, and showed and unveiled to the world that going forward, you want miniatures for Dungeons and Dragons, you want terrain for Dungeons and Dragons, there's only one place to go, and that is Legos, and you can throw your Dwarven Forge in a lake, in my humble opinion. All right, she threw it down, right? So if there is a primary person, it's Matthew Mercer and it's Ginny D. Now let's answer the if. Are they primary people for Dungeons and Dragons? No, absolutely not. There 100% was a possibility that Matthew Mercer could have become the primary person for Dungeons and Dragons about 5 years ago. Right now, and actually, Vox Machina was incredible. Mighty Nein is arguably the peak of Critical Role, and Bell's Hells has been an absolute narrative disaster. It has been rejected by critters, in my humble opinion. Everybody's like, y'all's doing the same nonsense. You were taking way too long to tell the story. You're going off on a bunch of side quests that don't matter. And all your millionaires are highly distracted, and none of this is working, right? And so the reality is Bell's Hells has not been super happy. And I do think the critters are not wrong. They're running like, they don't, the reason, why does Critical Role suck right now? I'll give you my humble opinion. Critical Role sucks because they won't commit, right? They should either be like, okay, you want to do Critical Role, all you get real serious and you lean into Dungeons and Dragons, right? And you realize Dungeons and Dragons made me a millionaire, and now I am a champion, I am an ally to Dungeons and Dragons. Not a single one of them are doing that. You know, they're like, oh wait, hey, let's give a one-cheeked attempt to overthrow Dungeons and Dragons with Candela Obscura. Oh, that failed horribly because we gave the task to Taliesin Jaffe, and he was extremely lazy with it and did not pick the right guy. He picked Spencer Stark, who copied John Harper. We could have hired John Harper and this would have worked, right? Like that's what happened. And so they won't commit. They don't commit to beating Dungeons and Dragons, and they don't commit to being Dungeons and Dragons. So they're half in, right? And one foot in the grave, one foot on a banana peel. And that's why they're falling. Right? And so the reality is there was a brief moment where Matthew Mercer might have been the it guy for Chloe Sevigny is like the iconic it girl, right? Like Matthew Mercer was close. He was close to being the it guy on Dungeons and Dragons, but he blew it because he wouldn't commit to beating Dungeons and Dragons or being Dungeons and Dragons, right? And he stayed in the middle, and nobody cared, right? So, and I do think CR has fallen off at this point. And however, I'm not sure there's anybody going to be there to take their place, because Matthew Mercer is maybe a once in a century talent, right? Like, so that's the problem. Like, I think everybody's ready to move on to CR, but there's nothing to replace him. Brendan Mulligan ain't going to get it done, right? So what about Ginny D? Same thing, just like lack of decision. Right? What is she? Is she a cosplayer? Is she a dungeon master? Is she a Dungeons and Dragons player? Right? Is she a show up at your convention and sign a bunch of products? What is she, right? And the reality is, I'm not sure she knows, right? And she has the right to decide, but when you don't commit, you get beat, right? And that's the issue. I think the only thing that has stopped Ginny D's momentum is Ginny D, right? Like, and all of these people, they think like, if you're gonna try to beat Dungeons and Dragons, take your best shot and fail and go all in, right? And that's the issue, is nobody's willing to bet everything that they can beat Dungeons and Dragons. And I get it. And just to be clear, one of the reasons why Dungeons and Dragons is that's what Gary did. He bet everything, including his family. If you look at the history, it is extremely clear his family cracked in half because of his like over-the-top investment in Dungeons and Dragons. And there was a possibility that his family could understand that he was doing something historical and accept it, but they didn't understand. And it's understandable that they didn't understand, because we only know that from hindsight. Gary knew it. Gary knew it on February 7th, 1974, and he was willing to go all in. And I could say that that's a place I would not follow, right? I would not sacrifice my family for Dungeons and Dragons. But Gary did, quite literally, in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.